Satnam, yogis and yoginis, hello, welcome. Welcome back to the next part on our journey through the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. We have been exploring a little bit about the meaning of yoga. That was the very beginning of the Yoga Sutras, and he was telling us about how we should find this peace in the waves that occur within our emotions and mind, and the consciousness getting attached to those waves of the mind and emotions. We've talked a bit about how the thoughts get colored, and through the coloring of these thoughts, we suffer. We experience suffering from that. And we talked about the difference between pain and suffering, and how there is different kinds of waves, vrittis. There is 5 kinds, and these 5 kinds both can be both suffering and non-suffering. So we explored that on the previous video, which for me was yesterday, but for you maybe is today, right now. Maybe you're just carrying on and watching these ones. And today we're going to go into the actual, a little bit more of the practice. How can we practice this, or how should our practice be, let's say, to help the stilling of these waves, of these vrittis. And so that's our next section. Now, my feeling is that the more we advance, the less careful we're going to be about every single word and every etymology of every word and so on. And we're going to be reading more, let's say, quickly through the translations. And then if there is some word that we want to pay special attention, we're going to check it more individually. So, because otherwise we would be here forever, and we're going to be moving along now. So let's start with the next one, and I will use the on-screen PDF. There we go. So we're going to be doing this section 1.12 to 1.16, the practice and the non-attachment. This is two very, very important concepts. And by the way, you remember I mentioned this PDF comes from the website swamij.com, from Swami Ganeshwara. And I highly recommend visiting that website, not only to get access to these documents, but because there's a whole section on the Yoga Sutras, and it goes slowly, one by one, and explaining it and giving exercises to do. Like, for example, on the previous video that we talked about the coloring and uncoloring of thoughts, klishta and aklishta, and the suffering, there is a whole section about how colored thoughts work and how we can do our practice to remove the coloring of the thoughts. And that's really interesting, and that's not something that I went into in the video, but that's something that I recommend that you visit that website and check it out for yourself. That website is full of plenty of wisdom that I utilize quite often to understand better some concept from Vedanta or Samkhya or something from the Bhagavad Gita, whatever. I generally go there and check first, or second at least, to make sure that I hear that voice, because it brings a lot of clarity. I find that. swamij.com. I will put it in the description of the video. Not on the online live stream, it's not there right now, but when I upload the video edited, then I will put the comments. I will put it in the comments. So anyway, here we are with the next section, practice and non-attachment. So let's read it. So 1.12 says, Abhyasa Vairagyam tat nirodha. And the translation that he gives is, these thought patterns, these vrittis, are mastered. He's talking about nirodha, the calming of the waves, regulated, coordinated, controlled, still, quieted. So these thought patterns are mastered, these vrittis are mastered through practice, abhyasa, and non-attachment, vairagya. And here, this 1.12 is actually really important sutra, because it introduces 2 concepts which are quite fundamental to the practice of yoga. In fact, is the practice of yoga, right? Abhyasa is literally the practice. And we can see here, abhyasa is by or with practice, repeated practice. Vairagyabhyam is relation to the non-attachment, but normally we say Vairagya. Yeah, so Vairagya and Abhyasa. And we need to talk about these two terms individually. And let's start with Vairagya, which is this non-attachment. And that already we have to be clear about this. It's about non-attachment. It is different from detachment and is different from attachment. So there's these three different states. Yeah, you can be attached to something, detached from something, or non-attached to something. And the dharmic practice is about non-attachment. It's not a detachment, which is subtle difference, but very, very important. And this is one of these lines that we have to explore with a lot of consciousness, because we very easily cross the line. Like when we practice humility or we embody humility and we end up feeling belittlement, like feeling very small and you have no value. And there's a difference between humility and having no value. But having no value is more like humiliation. And that line gets crossed so easily. And so we need to talk about these lines. So if we are attached to something and we notice that attachment, and we notice that attachment is source of a number of certain stresses or suffering of some sorts, then we want to let go of that attachment. But in the process of letting go of that attachment, it's very easy to cross the line and go into detachment. Now, let's see if we can find some examples. Let's say, well, I will use a personal example. I'm doing these YouTube videos, right? And I'm putting here all the research that I've been doing, and I put a lot of passion and energy into this project, and this is something that I feel the call to do, so I apply myself to creating them. Now, a part of me will be saying, well, are you getting attached to this? How attached are you? Are you getting attached to maybe, let's say, a number of views or a number of hours watched on these videos? And it's very easy to feel insecure about yourself when you are noticing this. So let's say, for example, I'm looking and say, well, the views have gone down. What's happening? What's wrong? And then you could take it as a criticism of yourself, because you are attached to that. And if that fails in some way, whatever failing means, no, I'm not saying this is what's happening. I'm just saying it as an example, right? If I saw that this was in some measure of my ego, let's say, is failing in some way, a part of me would feel insecure. And that would be a proof that I'm being attached to that, a number of views. If I'm teaching yoga classes and the students stop coming, then my attachment to that could be a sort of suffering. And then you say, well, okay, so yoga teaches us non-attachment, but what does that mean? Does that mean that I shouldn't care whether students come or not to the class? Well, not necessarily. It's not about you don't care, because that would be detached. So I'm going and I teach my yoga class, I get my money, they pay me the class, and then I go home. And I don't care whether people come or not. Well, that's detachment, clearly. Yeah, it's like you don't care. There's no caring. Now, careless is not the same as carefree, right? And careless, like you don't care, means that you don't put any effort for that thing. Now, if I am teaching yoga classes, or in this case, I'm recording these videos, I am putting a lot of effort. So I care for that. However, am I going to be attached to how many people are watching them or not? Well, that would show how much am I attached to that. So non-attachment would be, yes, I do the videos, and I do care whether people watch them or not. Because first of all, I am trying to serve. This is my opportunity to serve people. So if people are not receiving this that I am offering, is it because there is something that I need to adjust? Not to judge myself, like saying, oh, you're doing a bad job, but saying, well, is there anything that I need to adjust so that this can satisfy the purpose of why it is being done and offer the service? So maybe there is more effort that I need to put on the thumbnails, or more effort in the editing or in the subtitles, or whatever it had to be. So I could calibrate how much more effort do I have to put into something, but because you care that you are offering that service, not because you are attached to the result of what's happening. So this attachment to the result, that's the thing that is tricky. For example, I was just mentioning how this is part of my service. And the definition of service is something that is offered without any expectation of any reciprocity. You just do or something, or give something, offer something for the sake of giving, for the sake of offering. And we generally do this 10% of your time or effort or money. And you don't expect anything back, not even a thank you, right? So if you feel unsatisfied because nobody's appreciating your service, that's not service, right? So if you go and let's say you go to a soup kitchen and you are offering food to the people living in the street, and nobody cares, nobody gives you thank you, nobody says anything, you just go there and do it. And if you feel bad because you feel like you're wasting your time, then you are wasting your time, because that's not seva. If you were doing seva, you would not be attached to the result, to the outcome of that. So, like in this example, I'm doing these videos, and a part of me has to be checking, like, do I care how many people are watching or not? Yes, I mean, I care because I want to offer it to people, so I want to make sure that it reaches, but am I attached to how many people are watching or not? That's the thing that I need to be constantly checking. And I'm not perfect, I haven't mastered this, yes, but we are constantly in this process of tuning in how much we are non-attached versus detached. Detached would be, I would just open this video, I would talk whatever I have to go to do it, and then I just close, and then I don't care whether people watch it or not. And then why are you doing it then? Why are you even recording the videos? And I mean, to me, honestly, this is my service, but it's also selfish, right? And this is the thing with the attachment, because for me to offer these videos is an opportunity to make sure that I employ my time in what I consider a useful manner. So I prepare these videos, I'm reading, I'm taking some notes, I'm doing some drawings, and all this is helping me stay aligned with Guru. So if I didn't have these videos, then all this time that I'm employing doing this, where would I use that time? So unless I had some other project that was similarly aligned, I could be wasting my time very easily. And I know I could. I very easily waste my time. So I don't want to go into that. So I set myself up by doing these videos. So in a way, this is also selfish. And now I am attached to that. So there is a certain level of attachment to how much this is helping me and this is serving me. And here we enter into this line that we were talking in the previous video as well, whether that, if you want to get enlightened, you have to be attached to want to get enlightened. No? Swami Satchidananda, when he talks about non-attachment, he talks about desire. So to do things without desire. He talks about non-attachment as when you do something, don't do it for the desire for yourself, but do it for others. And you may desire that the others be well and the others receive it, which is kind of your offering, your service. But it's about this concept of desireless. But you know what? Even to get enlightened, you have to desire to get enlightened. So that desire is something that is also there. No? So it's impossible not to desire. To be free from absolute desire, it's not possible. So since I'm going to desire, how am I going to choose to desire? So how am I going to choose to utilize the energy of the desire? And attachment linked to the desire is kind of in the same way. If I'm going to be attached, because total absolute non-attachment is like the most extreme case of self-realization. Maybe when you get to that point, you're totally free from that. But until then, there is calm, there is desire, there is attachment. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to attach to my Guru, I'm going to attach to the teachings, I'm going to attach to my practice, to Abhyasa or my sadhana. And so where am I going to put, how is that attachment going to serve me to get to non-attachment? So this is the example that I was giving on the previous video, how to use a stick with fire to burn everything else, and then at the end of the day, the last minute, you throw the stick into the fire and then it's gone. No? So that's the right kind of attachment. So that's the Vairagya concept, yeah, that non-attachment. All right, so there's non-attachment, there's attachment, and there's detachment, and we have to be checking. This is like empathy and apathy and sympathy and antipathy. That we have to check that when we are practicing, okay, when we are practicing the non-attachment, when we are letting go of things, that we don't let go to the extreme, that we don't care, and we just totally detached of any kind of outcome of what happens. And it's a constant paradox, okay? I talk about this many times. The spiritual path is full of paradoxes, and this Abhyasa Vairagyam is one of them. In swamij.com, in the website I was recommending before, they draw scales, and in one they put Abhyasa, in the other one Vairagyam, and they're saying Abhyasa is your practice, which is keep up, and never let up, never let go. And Vairagyam, which is non-attachment, is always let go, right? So keep up is hold it, keep it up, and the other one is always let go. So you see how there is a constant play of polarities between these two concepts, even in the spiritual practice. So that's I think that's really interesting, the interplay between these two concepts. Okay, so let's say if you apply this to a couple, you can see that as well. How attached am I to my partner, or to my wife, or my husband, whatever you have next to you, right? So if you live in a constant, I have absolutely no attachment to them, and basically they may come and go, whatever has to happen, and that's the thing. We often mask our detachment as a non-attachment with a willingness to surrender to hukam, to the will of God. So saying, well, if she has to stay, she will stay. If she has to go, she will go. Well, then you are not putting much energy into the couple, right? So it's very possible that you're planting the seeds for a breakup. So there is a need for a constant effort, and you need to put energy into this. And there has to be a certain level of attachment in a couple. So, and that's okay, right? So to say, well, I'm attached to my wife, okay, that's all right. We don't have to get to the level of full detachment, which is part of what we were exploring just the other video as well, when we were talking about the renunciate life. I renunciate everything, not to be attached. But actually what you are doing is you're detaching yourself. Or it could even be that you are so attached that you are avoiding being in the presence of that so that you don't feel the attachment. So like somebody who stops smoking and they still feel the desire, here comes the desire to smoke, but in order to avoid smoking, you just don't go with your friends who smoke, don't go to the environments where they smoke, and you avoid the kind of social context that would trigger the smoking, like after a meal having a coffee and a cigarette. If that was your routine, you avoid that. Well, that doesn't mean that you are not attached. That means you are still attached, you're just not doing it, right? So reaching the point of non-attachment is when you can be in the presence of other smokers and you don't feel the need nor the desire anymore. So that's when you have reached to that point. So in a way, when we read some of the teachings, we read Guru Nanak and other gurus and saints, they will talk about how we are very attached to our wives and our families and our children. And in a way, yes, we have to practice non-attachment to that. And at the same time, it's okay if there is some level of attachment. I'll give another example. I remember a teacher from the community, from my Sangat, and being with her in her house, and she had an adolescent boy. And she said, the moment that he was born, I took him in my arms and I said, this is not my boy. This is God's children, God's child. And I am here just to hold the space for him. And someday he comes, someday he will go. And she said it so calmly. And that was years before I would even have children. So I remember that idea was wild. There is something very appealing about the idea and something very saintly about it. Like, I am just a vehicle for this soul, to hold the space of the family for this soul to come in. And being a woman is literally a vehicle for the soul of the baby to come in and not get attached to that and say, well, it's not my child, it's not mine that I have to hold, but it's somebody that is going to be staying in my hands and then someday fly away. I think it's beautiful. For me, it would be impossible. So when I see my daughters, I cannot avoid feeling attached to them. And I feel the love, and I care. And I care whether they would, if they someday couldn't be with me, or if they rejected being with me, let's say, for example, some crazy thought, I hope, why would do? But if that happened, it would break my heart. I would not just say, well, she flew away. So that's my level of attachment. And maybe there's something that I have to work on. But I guess my feeling, my intuition is that those who practice the householder yoga, there has to be some form of attachment to some certain level. Otherwise, go to a monastery. Because if you live in the life of a family, there's going to have to be that attachment is like the cement that is going to glue together two bricks. And you're trying to build a house like a family. You need something that's going to hold the two bricks together. Otherwise, if you put no attachment, you put the two bricks and the others one next to each other, the first time you have a big storm, it's going to fall down. And storms happen in families. And then what happened to the house? Does it stand up or not? So a certain level of attachment, that's okay. And we will come back to this point when we get to the last line of the Yoga Sutras, of these ones that we are exploring today, 1.16, when it's talking about attachment to the gunas. And we will talk about this a little bit more. But it's good to accept the position where we are now, but also to explore how much am I crossing the line from attachment to non-attachment and into detachment. So that's where we don't want to go into. Hopefully the concept is clear. Let me know if it's not. All right, so that's about Vairagya, the non-attachment. Always let go, always let go. And the other concept is Abhyasa. And Abhyasa is practice, means practice. And what kind of practice? Abhyasa is specifically referring to the practice of keeping your mental state of peace, let's say. So calm vritis. Yeah? So that requires a constant practice to keep your mind at peace, to keep holding the reins of the wild horses, if you know the metaphor with the Bhagavad Gita. And that's a kind of practice that we have to do constantly during the whole day. So if I am with somebody and they say something and I feel that there could be an implication of some criticism that is could be offensive towards me, then it will require an effort on my part to keep the peace of mind, but not to ignore the comments, because that would be detached. So, like, I don't care what they say to me. No, I care, because sometimes people, even if it's in the wrong ways, they will say something that you need to hear. So some people will not have the grace to say it in another way. And so, can I listen to it? Can I hear it? And can I check? Is it for me? I'm not going to get attached to my image and what they are saying, but is it for me? Do I have to do something with it? Can I grow from that comment? And then, if so, put it into practice, Abhyasa. If not, I let it go, Vairagyam. So you see, that's happening in the moment, and that happens in every moment during the day. We need to keep constant practice of how we hold the peace of mind. So that's that kind of practice when it's talking Abhyasa. Now, there is another word that we utilize for practice, and that's a very common word, and it's very important that we make the differentiation, and that's the word sadhana. So the difference between Abhyasa and sadhana, and by the way, sadhana will be the name of the second book in the 4 Yoga Sutras. Yoga Sutras, it's not 4 Yoga Sutras, it's 196 aphorisms, of which there is 4 little books, so 4 sections, let's say, padas. We are doing the first one, and when we go into the second one will be sadhana pada. And sadhana pada is the practice. But what does it mean by practice in sadhana? Well, it can be 2 ways. It can go 2 ways. When most of the times when we utilize that word, it is generally as a way of getting to know what you actually, like what do you do to do yoga, let's say. So what do you do in the morning? You get up. What is your practice? Do you do some sun salutations? Do you do some kriyas? Do you do some? Do you read some prayers like the Japji Sahib, or do you meditate? Do you pray? What is the actual practice that you are doing, and let's say doing yoga, right? Rather than being a yogi during the day with abhyasa and keeping the peace of mind, but actually some practice that you actually do. Which meditations do you practice? Which kriyas do you practice? So that's the way we generally mention the term sadhana. Now, sadhana will include abhyasa, because while you are doing the kriya, you could be thinking about something else, right? The mind can be distracted and thinking anything else, or you can keep track of the mind and bringing it to peacefulness, but concentrated. So that's the abhyasa part of sadhana. So sadhana can include abhyasa, but sadhana, it's also more inclusive than just the exercises that you do, let's say, in the morning. Because as we will see in the second book, the second pada, the sadhana pada, that's where we're going to see all the details of the eightfold path, with the yamas and niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, all that. And that includes yamas and niyamas. And yamas is part of my attitude in the world. So that part of the attitude in the world, that's also going to be part of sadhana. And that includes the concept that is going to bring peacefulness of mind, the abhyasa. Okay, so hopefully abhyasa is more about the mind, peaceful mind, and sadhana, a more general term that includes that and more inclusive of any practice that you do. And sometimes we talk about sadhana just to know exactly which practices, like which meditations do you do. We will say, what sadhana are you doing right now? So like that. Okay, so this all came from this first line, the 1.12. So Abhyasa Vairagyam Tad Nirodha. So these riddhis are mastered through practice and non-attachment. Hopefully, after all the explanation that I give, when we read it again, we understand it in a different way, or we understand it more clearly or more deeply. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job well. Yeah? But maybe you find your own interpretation or your own understanding of this line. And if so, I welcome you to write it in the comments of the video or in the chat. And we can always find new interpretations. Now, there is also something very, very interesting about Abhyasa and Vairagya, and we will explore it in a moment. But I want to... how are we going to do this? Yes. Let me show one diagram. Now, this will make more sense if you watch the mind course that I did some time ago, in which we talked of the different levels of consciousness, which we have a diagram that I will show you in a moment. But also, there is one video which says negative mind, positive mind, neutral mind. And this video, I'm just going to summarize very, very quickly to get an idea of what it means. The negative mind is the mind that says no. And that's the mind that is kind of trying to protect us from things from the outside, like, no. And it's very instinctive. And it's based on past experiences that could have been painful or traumatic, and also stressful and causing some sort of distress, stress, or how do you say that? Suffering. Yeah. So you want to You want to stay away from that. So he says, no, no, no. So that's linked to what has been stored, these smritis, these memories that have been stored in the subconscious. So the negative mind is linked to the subconscious. Yeah. Now the positive mind is the one that's positive, is more, is yes, 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 is the one that says yes, is the one that is projective, the one that calculates and analyzes and sees the possibilities and makes a plan to put it into motion to get to where you want to get, and it's expanding and it moves you forward. And we can associate those two minds to these 5 levels of consciousness, which you should be already familiar with. So as I mentioned, the subconscious is associated to the negative mind. The semi-conscious, this is the general flow of thoughts during the day. They are projective, they are positive, there's more, more, more. We want to expand and we want to go on, yeah? What it will happen sometimes, let's say, from the negative mind, we may experience some insecurity or some fear, and the fear is like a bubble that goes up to the surface, and then the positive mind will expand on the fear. So maybe we are afraid of something, or no, I don't want to do that. Like yesterday, I was giving the example of me as a young man and feeling insecure about my body and very thin and very tall and oh, why am I going to approach this girl and she's going to reject me, or whatever I was afraid of approaching a girl. Well, that fear would originate from here, from this insecurity and the subconscious fear, and then it would go to the surface, and then the positive mind would add things to it. So it's not like the positive mind is a good mind and says, no, you are fine. No, the positive mind adds things. So if you are saying, I'm afraid, say, yeah, you should be afraid, because you remember the last time when they look at you, look at how they looked at you. They looked at you funny, and I think they saw how inappropriate you are, or whatever. So the positive mind adds things onto it. But the positive mind is not bad. It just wants to add things and it just wants to help. So, but what happens is, because if we don't guide it, it will add things on top of what the negative mind tells us from the subconscious. So any garbage that you accumulate in the subconscious will float, and then the positive mind will take it and will make it your fate, right? So what do we do with this? Well, in that video, I explained how there is 3 things we have to do. By the way, in the neutral mind, this is when we get to a state of consciousness that we can differentiate the negative from the positive and make a conscious choice. That's a neutral mind. And I mentioned there is 3 things we have to do. The negative mind, linked to the subconscious, we need to clean it. The positive mind, clean the subconscious means also letting go of this coloring associated. You see the colors associated to the different bubbles, the different memories. So that's kind of like the footprint that were left on the sands of the banks of the river. Yeah, you are walking on the sand, and then you left some footprints. So the memories that left a footprint on my subconscious, we have to go there and erase it. That's part of it, yeah? Doesn't mean forget. It doesn't mean forget. I'm not saying forget your memories. I'm saying erase the coloring, remove the coloring from it, the klishta, which is linked to the suffering. So that's what we have to do in the negative mind, clean it. And afterwards, anyway, the negative mind says no. So it can either say no to you, and then you negate yourself, and you're feeling inappropriate, and you feel you're not good enough, you're not valuable enough, you're not trained enough, you're not whatever enough, I'm never enough. That's your no applying it to yourself. Or you can utilize the power of that no and say no to any kind of toxic thought and toxic bubble and toxic coloring associated to those memories. So the very same power of the negative mind can be transformed to purify the coloring of your subconscious memories. So the key is, what do we have to do here in the negative mind? To clean it and let go of any coloring, clean up any garbage. This is the example of the other video with the garbage and burning the garbage away, yeah? So saying no to that garbage. Now, with the negative mind clean enough, the positive mind will want to help the cleaning, and it will even give you more support, to this process of purifying. So, but the positive mind I mentioned, it just wants to help. It just doesn't know who to help and how to do it. So you have to guide it and you have to train it. Otherwise, the positive mind untrained is like going here, going there, going there. Yeah, it wants to help, but it doesn't know who to help. It's like a dog. It wants to help, but train the dog. Okay, dog, now sit. Okay, now let's go. No, now stay. Roll. The dog does what you want, and that should be the way we utilize the active, fiery, intellectual mind. We should be able to train it to such extent that we could say, okay, now think about that, and the mind would utilize all its power and its focus to think exactly that thought that you want and nothing else. If we don't do that, then it starts with its imagination and fantasy, and maybe it starts projecting things, imagining things, and then you are making a whole movie in your head that isn't true. We talked about this when we were talking about the klishta of one of the British, which was fantasy, and mental fantasy, and seeing things which are not there. So we do that. That's the positive mind tends to do that if we don't train it. So all that was like a little summary of the concept of the three minds. So we need to clean the negative mind and train the positive mind and awaken the neutral. Awaken is like awakening the consciousness. Yeah, you see here consciousness. Okay, why am I mentioning all this? Well, pay attention. Look, Abhyasa Vairagyam. Yeah, Abhyasa Vairagyam tat nirodha. So this is about the practice, Abhyasa, and the non-attachment. Well, look, non-attachment is, so look here, sorry. Don't look at me, look at here. So look, Vairagyam, Vairagya is this letting go of all this garbage that we have accumulated here. Now, this thing that is in the subconscious, this coloring of the thoughts, of the memories, of the smritis, the memory, this comes, it stays there because we are attached to it. So we are attached to feeling insecure, or feeling not good enough, or feeling like the victim. Everybody, does something to me, I am the victim. And why? It was very easy. We like to play these games. We get addicted to playing these games, and sometimes we get rewarded in a very sadistic way. But, if you play the victim card, people pay attention to you, and they, oh, poor guy, and they give you energy and time and attention and affection and all these beautiful things that we crave because we are very attached to that. So the memories that have been painful could even be traumas. There is some sort of attachment to them. And so the process of cleaning the subconscious, that's linked to the process of vairagya, the non-attachment to all these things. And look, this is the place from which desires come up. Look, too. This is the second level, the link to the second chakra, like sexual desires, but any kind of desire. And I was mentioning how Satchidananda says the concept of non-attachment is about letting go of the desire, and selfish desires particularly, like not to desire to do your practice, but to desire to something material. So letting go, it's the process of cleaning the negative mind. And the other, that's vairagya. And abhyasa, that's the practice. The practice is the training of the mind to find the peace, to find the flat surface. So that the abhyasa is what's going to help training the positive mind. Vairagya is what's going to help cleaning the negative mind. And it's through vairagya and abhyasa that we can make conscious choices. So the combination of these two, this one clean and this one train, then we can make conscious choices. And it takes a lot of consciousness to do these two things. So here we see the interplay between the three minds, negative, positive, and neutral, linked to this one line in the Yoga Sutras. Abhyasa Vairagyam tat nirodha. The mastering of the thought patterns of the vrittis comes through practice and non-attachment. So cleaning the negative mind and training the positive mind. Well, all that explanation has helped to understand better, hopefully. Now, the next lines should be easier to understand now when we go into them. So let's read 1.13. Practice, abhyasa, means choosing, applying the effort, and doing those actions that bring a stable and tranquil state, sthitau. Tatra stitau yatanaha abhyasa. So the abhyasa means choosing and applying the effort, so that means that there is a certain discipline. Remember, Atta Yoga Anushasanam, that there is a discipline. And doing those actions that bring a stable and tranquil state, the stitau. Stability. So finding stability. Simple, yes. It takes commitment. It takes effort to hold that state of abhyasa, of practice. You remember that I mentioned about how yoga is not for the lazy. Yeah, yoga is for the one who is willing to make the effort. You have to put your commitment. But commitment is the first step to happiness, so, and to liberation. So there we go. Everything falls into place. 1.14. Now this one is a bit difficult to read. I'm not sure I'm going to do it correctly, but sa tu dirgha kala nairantaira satkara asvetaha dridha bhumi. When that practice is done for a long time, without a break, and with sincere devotion, then the practice becomes a firmly rooted, stable, and solid foundation. So when you do it for a long time, with no breaks, with sincere devotion. Let's check the for this one, let's check the words that appear in this wonderful text. Remember, we want to get to stitau, the steadiness. Steadiness, you don't get it by doing it one day. What does it require? Well, it requires for a long time, without interval, without interruption, and with a certain devotion and reverence, respect. Well, I mean, if we separate the word satkara, sat is right, but it's also like truth, sat, truth, and kara is action. Kar, ekon kar, like kar, action, or to do, yeah? So it's like a true action and right action. I think that I mentioned in the previous video how in the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, so maybe someday we can explore it. I haven't read much about Buddhism for a long time. I think I read about some of these concepts 20 years ago, and I haven't read them again, like the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So it's not very fresh in my memory. But as far as I remember, one of the 8 was right understanding, that we talked about this in the previous video, or two videos ago. And another one is right action. And literally right action is that, satkara. Satkara. So the right kind of action. I would translate sat more like truth, but okay. So the true form of action. And he's saying that's something that you do with respect, with devotion, with reverence, and sincerity. Yeah, sat is truth, like satya. So sincerity and earnestness. But if you notice this implies a certain form of passion, yeah? To be sincere and devoted and earnest and positive. This means that you are putting effort with passion. Yeah, you're doing it with passion. And if you remember passion, we can connect it to emotions, yeah, and desire. Passion is linked to desire, like the traditional sense of the word. So we were talking before about being non-attached, but now it's telling us do it passionately in a way. So here we go again with this double-edged sword, right? And this little line that is easy to cross, and this paradox of concepts that we need to keep balanced. Now, there was a time in my life when I used to try to practice non-attachment in a way that I was just letting go. And just like I was mentioning before about, I do the videos and I make some effort to make the videos appealing and so people can receive these teachings. There was a time when I wouldn't do that. And I was just, okay, I'm doing yoga classes. But then if you don't advertise it, if you don't promote it, if you don't show it, if you don't make yourself visible, how does people know that you are teaching yoga classes? You can say, I teach yoga classes, but you teach it in your house. There is no sign in the outside. Who is going to come, right? So you can say, well, I'm not attached whether people come or not, but then you're not fulfilling your destiny in a way. So it takes some effort, it takes on, and with the effort, you can do it fighting with it, or you can do it passionately and enthusiastically. And here's where this sadhkara comes. And there was something about enthusiasm a bit and passionate, which is kind of similar, but I want to point out one thing. If you're going to do something, do it with passion. And if you're going to do something, be passionate about it. And why? Why should we do it passionately? Why not dispassionate? Because non-attached may seem like dispassionate, but if you are dispassionate about it, then it's like it has no soul. And let me think about the word enthusiasm. If I'm not wrong, I may be wrong, but if I'm not wrong, I should have looked before I said these words, but sometimes I just improvise. So, thus, like enthusiasm, this thus, the root of thus, I don't know whether it comes from Greek or Latin, maybe we should check, but I believe it comes from being with God. So enthused is like being with God. So God is within you, and when you are enthusiastic, it's like there is life, there is something vibrant. I don't know how to describe this feeling of being godly, within you. Doing the right action, the sadhkara, you have this feeling of being satisfying your purpose in a certain way. So here we go. Sorry. We have this for a long time with no interval, and being passionate and devotional and respectful and sincere, earnest, all these beautiful qualities, and we need to maintain and cultivate this kind of practice to be established and firm on the ground. Let's read some translations from here. When the practice is done for a long time without a break and with sincere devotion, then the practice becomes a firmly rooted, stable, and solid foundation. Remember, the stability was linked to the stitau, This is the stability and the grounding that we want. Funny, we want to be grounded. We want to go to the ethers. We want to go to the heavens, but we need to be grounded. So you cannot grow a tree if the roots are not strong. And these are the roots of our practice. Okay, it's like the roots have to be like firmly established on the ground. So there has to be a groundment in your practice. It says the higher you want to go, the lower you have to dip in your mat. As a teacher or as a practitioner, you want to be high, you want to elevate yourself, you have to bow low. You have to ground yourself. Satchidananda says, practice becomes firmly grounded when well attended for a long time without a break and in all earnestness. Constant efforts with great love. Interesting, Vivekananda uses the word love here. Okay, so let me see if I had some notes. Yes, so this for a long time without a break and with sincere devotion. You can apply this in a number of ways. And let me give an example of this. When you are doing a meditation, and let's say you want to do a 31-minute meditation, chanting Sata Nama, for example, Kirtan Kriya. And if you're going to do 31 minutes, you cannot just start and then do something else and then come back, right? It has to be with no interruption, 31 straight minutes, non-stop. And that also means that when you are doing it, do not let the mind wander and think something else, because at some point the meditation becomes so familiar that you can do it and think of other things. And I'm thinking something else. Now that's interruptions. So remember, it has to be for a long time. So keep it for a long time without break, and then you put the passion into it. If you're going to chant passionately. This is something we also say during these practices where there's a lot of people meditating together, or this, like the tantras, for example, the white tantra, or when we're doing these meditations that are really hard, and maybe you have your arms up. Sometimes we do this 31 minutes, sometimes 1 hour, and it's painful, and you are fighting your whole demons are coming to visit you. And we say, chant stronger and put more passion into the chant. And, if we are chanting a mantra, let's say. So that chanting stronger and more passionately with more enthusiasm, more earnest, it's gonna be easier. It's gonna make it easier, the effort. So you can see it, these three aspects, long time, no break, and earnest, you can see it in one single session and then hold that attitude throughout a long time as well. So we do sometimes, you may choose a meditation and you want to receive all the benefits that the meditation can give to you. And every meditation has its own things. I was just mentioning Kirtan Kriya. Satanama helps to, for example, balance the cycles. So it's one meditation that is extremely good for all women. That's really good. And so you could, if you wanted to work on something specifically, you could do like 40 days straight. That's when we say a 40-day sadhana. We call it like that. And it means 40 days uninterrupted, meaning you cannot do 10 days meditation, then one day you don't do it, and then 30 more. It has to be 40. And if on day 39 you stop, you have to start again to actually fully receive the benefit. And we do this for 40 days or 90 or 120, or if we do for 1,000 days, depending on the level of mastery that you want to get onto that meditation. And if you do for 40 or 90, it has a different effect. So that's something that we study also in the level ones and the trainings. But anyway, what I mean by that is you hold a commitment, and for a long time. And you choose. You say, nobody's going to tell you. You choose. Okay, I'm going to do this for 90 days. I'm going to do this for 1,000 days. And if you manage to hold the same meditation every day, 22 minutes or 11 minutes, even if it's 11, every single day for 3 years, 1,000 days, that's incredible. Because someday you will be sick. Someday you will be angry. Someday something will happen and you will find in an extreme circumstance, extreme situation, something will pull you out of where you normally do your practices and you are in some weird places. And when I've done a number of these 1,000 days, and sometimes it catches you in a very difficult situation, particularly if I'm traveling from one country to another, and I have some funny stories of being in the toilet in the airport doing my meditation, because I cannot miss a day. If I miss a day, I have to start again, and I want to complete the 1,000 days. So you find what you have. So I'll share it. It's silly, but I'll share it anyway. Okay, so I was doing this meditation, and I did it for, well, I initially wanted for 1,000, but I did for more than 1,000 days, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 days. Anyway, what matters is that there was this day I was traveling, and I had no other chance. I had to do it in the airport. Otherwise, I would be too late when I got there, and then I wouldn't want to do it so late in the evening. And I didn't do it in the morning because of traveling. So I'm in the airport. What can I do? Where can I go? Well, there's a lot of people around. I thought, well, in some gates, they have a little toilet next to the gate. And that toilet is kind of private to the people who are crossing through the gate to just before they board the plane. At least that was the airport in Mallorca. So I was like, let's go to one of these that has no plane, and there's nobody in the waiting area. I cross through the barrier and I go to that little toilet. And so I did it. I went there and I sat there and I start my meditation. Clock is on. I have just enough time to do the meditation before I have to go to get my plane. And I start, and at that moment, okay, this story is going to get nasty very soon. Not very nice to share, but okay, I'll do it. Somebody had the same idea. They said, I really need to go to toilet, and I don't want to disturb other people, so let me go to a toilet that is nobody around. And you can imagine why they wanted to go to toilet. So here comes another guy, goes to the stall next to me. He doesn't know I'm there because I'm with a closed door, and I'm... And this guy had a major dysfunction in the intestine, let's say, and there was all sort of sound effects, all sort of smell effects floating around, and I was there doing my meditation for 22 minutes, thinking, why God are you doing this to me? And then, after that day, if someday I didn't want to do it, I thought, if that day I did it, how am I not going to do it today? That day I did the meditation, so today you can do it. So sometimes we have these extreme circumstances. That was quite extreme. And they serve us to put into perspective the rest of life. If that day I managed to do it, I held my commitment, that is a win. And the courage that you get from having had that win, that stays with you. I mean, the suffering went on for 20-something minutes. But the benefits of the commitment that I got from there, that stayed, and the memory stayed, like a good memory, a memory of me overcoming a challenge. I have others like these, similar examples, and I'm sure you have too. And the good thing is this, that we hold these memories not in a colored thought like a suffering, but as a motivation, as a passion to hold on to our practice, to our sadhana. Yeah, now I'm talking about sadhana, but I'm also talking about Abhyasa. So there we go. For a long time, no break and earnestness. So do it if you want to choose a good meditation to master. That's 1,000 days. If you stop one day, you have to start again. And that's going to be enough motivation to never miss a day. There we go. So that was 1.14. Let's check now 1.15 and 16. These are the last two. Drishta anushravika vishaya vitrishnasya vashikara sanya vairagyam. And I'm probably butchering the Sanskrit, so my apologies to the gurus. I do my best. When the mind loses desire even for objects seen or described in a tradition or in scriptures, it acquires a state of utter desirelessness that is called non-attachment. So here is this describing non-attachment. Let's read other translations as well. I think it's going to help. We read this one. The consciousness of self-mastery is one who is free from craving for objects seen or heard about is non-attachment. Yeah. The subjugation of the thirst for objects seen or heard of is non-attachment. So there is a thirst, there is a desire for something that we see or we hear. So it's talking about the desire that we have for the things on the gross level. On the gross level. Let me share this. Nope, not this one. This one. You will remember this diagram. So we go from the subtle to the gross. This is Purusha, this is Prakritic, this is creation, and this is the grossest level, is the level that we can perceive from the five senses, the Indriyas, linked to the five tattvas. So he's telling us anything that you perceive through these five senses, if you practice the letting go of the desire of whatever is, anything that you can associate to these five senses, that's non-attachment. So working on non-attachment on the level of the five senses. Sorry, not this one here. This is one. So the subjugation of the thirst for objects seen or heard, and I would say like the five senses, not just these two, that is non-attachment. Let's read this one. Scherer has been giving us some very interesting concepts. Freedom is that triumphant state of consciousness that is beyond the influence of desire. I don't know where he got the freedom from. I think he's being a bit more poetic. The mind ceases to thirst for anything it has seen or heard of, even what is promised in the scriptures. Even what is promised in the scriptures. But look, ceases to thirst for anything that it has seen or heard of. So it's kind of also linked to our memories. So again, we are not only letting go of the desire for the things that we see and hear, but also the things that we have seen and heard. So for the smoker who is not in the spaces where people smoke, and that's, he's not exposed to smoke anymore. Okay, just because he doesn't go there doesn't mean that he has developed the non-attachment. But if he's able to clean himself or herself from the desire to smoke, even whether he's in that context or not, even from the memory, just because you know how it felt to smoke, And if you remember that, you don't feel the desire. Now that's when you have reached that state of non-attachment. And I made the point of mentioning that this was working on this level because of the next line that comes now. I will just read it from here. Tat param purusha kyater guna vaitrasyanyam. Let me read the translation from here. Indifference to the subtlest elements. So you say it mentioned the gunas here. Look, transcendent purusha, the witness, the spirit. Kyatehe, discernment, or the vision of purusha. Guna vaitrasyanyam. So the gunas, the attributes, the subtle attributes, and instead of being free from all craving and desires. So freedom from the least craving for the gunas. When there is none thirst for even the gunas, the constituents of nature, due to realization of the purusha, that is supreme non-attachment. That is extreme non-attachment which gives up even the thirst for the gunas and which comes from the knowledge of the real nature of the purusha. And Satchidananda comes to say, he makes a comment in his book on this. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see, where was it? Well, there's a few things he mentions. In other words, with the ordinary vairagya, you may be completely free from new things coming in to tempt you, but what will you do with the impressions that are already in your mind? So one thing is, already there's those which are already stored in your mind. Sorry, can you see properly? All right. The moment you understand yourself as the true self, so it's linking to the Purusha, you find such peace and bliss that the impressions of the petty enjoyments you experienced before became as ordinary specks of light in front of the brilliant sun. You lose all interest in them permanently, and that is the highest non-attachment. So he's not talking about the gunas, but he's making a point to say that even the memories that you had, whatever memory you had, however pleasant it was, when you reach the highest form of non-attachment, this is the param. How is that? I thought it was. Sorry, hold on a second. Yeah. Okay. So the higher form of non-attachment would be even when you can let go of anything that was stored in the past, whatever memory you have. So you clean yourself from any memories, and that implies that freedom that is linked to the freedom from anything stored, the deepest impressions and memories, which is what we call the samskaras, which are the seeds of karma. So cleaning out and feeling non-attached to any desire that comes from these past impressions. So going to the river, and cleaning up all the sand and making it so that there is no coloring, there is no attachment to any of those impressions. That by itself, that form of non-attachment with practice, what it's doing is actually cleaning the samskaras. Yeah, and by cleaning the samskaras, you not only find enlightenment, because he's talking about one speck of light, like Like, the desire to smoke might be like a little speck of light, but the true enlightenment is like watching the sun. So that light is not only enlightenment, but this is actually liberation. So you're liberated from the samskaras. And the samskaras are the thing that determines whether we have to come back to this life or not. We incarnate again because we still have karma to resolve. So the moment that all samskaras are cleaned, that's when there is no more need to reincarnation, which means that you are fully liberated. So it's describing that you get to that level and even this is being cleaned. So that's one way of understanding this line. But there's something else about the gunas, the way it is described when it talks about the gunas, freedom from the least craving for the gunas. Because in Satchidananda's description, it doesn't talk about the gunas too much. It just says, for even the non-thirst for even the gunas. What does that mean? One of the things he said, well, you will know it when you are fully self-realized. When you are fully realized, when you get fully to Purusha, then that is the state that you're going to get to. And I mean, I don't understand it, but I guess it's because I'm not there. So if someday, God willing, we get here, we will understand it. So remember that this is a path, this is a map of consciousness, and we travel from here to here. So in the ordinary life world, we are attached to the senses, and in the previous line, we were talking about building non-attachment to this. But the most supreme non-attachment, the highest level of non-attachment, that's when we get to Purusha. You remember in this line? Yeah. Param, Tat Param Purusha. Yeah, so the supreme transcendent connection to the Purusha. So that happens when we have been able to transcend the gross, crossing through the functions of the mind. And remember, this is where you see these four aspects with the samskaras behind. You see where it is in the diagram. Hopefully it makes sense. And even beyond the gunas. So this is where it's saying guna, guna, vaitrasanyam. So freedom from even the least cravings for the guna. So you transcend that, and that's when you can merge Shiva and Shakti, like the spirit and the creation, and then you get to Purusha and experience the spirit. And that's one experience of Samadhi. So going all the way, what he's saying is when you get here, when you get to the full realization of the Purusha, when you're fully connected to the spirit and Purusha, that's when you will have that experience of total non-attachment to even the most subtle levels. And it makes sense that he's talking about, Patanjali is talking about it in this direction, because the next sutra that will come afterwards will be talking about Samadhi. Now we're going to go into what is Samadhi. So we have been doing this journey going up. It's telling us, basically these last lines, the ones we have been reading, is like, look, do your Abhyasa, do your Vairagya, work on your senses, work on your attachment to the senses, and you will go up towards Purusha and you will get to Samadhi. And now we are going to talk about Samadhi. So that's what it's going to come later, the talking about Samadhi. But before we go into Samadhi, I'm going to say something else about the gunas. So gunas are three. There's the Raja, the Tamas, and the Sattva. And the Tamas is the more relaxed, but sometimes passive. Raja is the more active and the more fiery. And the Sattva is the more subtle and generally considered more pure. But this is saying you're going beyond even attachment to the gunas. And I go back to the example that I gave at the beginning of this talk. I was talking about how there was a time when I was just like, oh, I'm going to teach yoga, but then I wouldn't really do any effort in promoting it or letting people know that I was doing yoga. And then, if you don't make yourself visible, how are people going to come to your classes? And in the same way, that was a period when I was exploring relaxation. I wanted to relax. But to me, it was like about relaxing. But I was relaxing kind of very attached to the concept of tamas, but not tamas like very passive, but more like relaxed. But then nothing was happening. It was like too much relaxed. And that's what I was saying before as well, when I talked about, for example, when you have a couple, you have a person that you want to be with, if you are too relaxed, nothing happens. There's no magic, yeah? And in a couple particularly, sexual tension implies tension. There has to be tension in order to be coupling, right? So you cannot just live a life of full relaxation. Just let me be in peace. Well, I mean, if you want to live in a monastery, maybe. But again, if you want to live a householder life, you have to find the right balance between tension and relaxation. It's not enough with just being relaxed. So the same way, that would be more connection to the tamas. If you relate it to the rajas as well, some people, it's all about doing. It's about action. It's about the fire that they feel within them and doing things. And they are always involved with many businesses and a lot of work, and they cannot stay relaxed for a minute. They have to always be engaged, otherwise they feel they are wasting their time. And I even know some yoga centers that they don't even do relaxation. And they became very popular for a while. I'm not going to say which ones they are, but they opened these centers and people would go in and then they do their physical effort, but then there's no shavasana. They would skip the shavasana and they would go into some gong meditation and then get into the street. And then everybody would go really high from the physical practice and the energy that they move, but there is no settling down. So everybody would get out with this high, like if they had smoked something. And it became very popular. But then there's no relaxation. So why so much raja? Again, so too much attachment to the raja. But sattva as well. Some people take sattva to extremes. They consider that the purity of the food and what we eat is supreme. That's the most important. And they put such a effort into doing everything pure and being pure with their body, with their diet, with like everything that they do, that it becomes like obsession, fascination, and it's like I don't know. There's something toxic about it, like oppressive, like a dictator. You have to be like this, and you have to be perfect. And this perfectionism, always like eating the perfect diet with the perfect food that is local and natural and organic, and all these things. It becomes so stressful, and we have to understand life is full of imperfections and life is full of impurities. Just to be in this world, it implies impurities. And okay, I can try to buy, clothes which are as natural material as possible, but it's inevitable. I'm using a computer, which is, there's a lot of plastic in the computer, and you can think, well, plastic could be, it's toxic in some ways. Well, but then what do? Do we get rid of plastic? No, I wear glasses. How would I get rid of plastic? I could not live without plastic. So we cannot be only looking for purity, the sattva. So in a way, what I read in this last line of the Yoga Sutras, the 1.16, is that we have to go even beyond the gunas, even beyond the attachment to the relaxation and the action and the purity. It's a little bit, I'm reducing in a simplistic model the three gunas, but I think it makes sense as well to talk about it like that. It's about when you're not attached to it, but you can express and explore all of them. This is like, okay, I'm invited and I'm invited to somebody's house and I eat a nice meal, and it's not the most perfect and pure meal of the world. To me, as long as it's vegetarian, generally it's fine with me. I will take it and I will enjoy it, but I'm not going to be super attached to enjoying the food. I can just allow it and part of life. Okay, great. I can enjoy that without being attached to the senses, without the desire to come back or to whatever. No. So this is part of what life means, to be in this world and enjoy the beauty of the world, but not a feeling like this constant desire for what this world can bring for me. And so even when you go into the gunas, it's not about just one of the gunas. Because some people will read the Bhagavad Gita and they will say, well, it's all about sattva. Sattva is the best guna, so we have to go for sattva. Well, all are necessary. Tama, Raja, Sattva, they're all necessary. So can we explore all of them without being attached to them? That's the key. But again, to say that one is beyond the gunas, that they are absolutely not attached to any of the gunas, that's such a wild idea to me that it makes sense that this is only that happens when you reach the self, the enlightened and totally illuminated and liberated state. And so that's why I don't understand it. That would make sense to me. So anyway, this was the following sutras that we were doing today. And I think in the title it was wrong. Now that I see the YouTube, I think the title of this streaming was wrong because I had to close it and open it again. I had some technical issues. But anyway, this was Sutras 112 to 116, talking about, most importantly, these two concepts, Abhyasa and Vairagya. So if you understood these two concepts of always letting go and keeping up, then that's it. That's the most important. So next video, we will come back with Samadhi. We have been doing streams all the week. I don't know if in the weekend I will be streaming or not. And if I stream in the weekend, I don't even know if we will continue with the Yoga Sutras, or maybe we will do something different. We will see. That you have to be patient for that. I trust that you will. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Thank you everyone for supporting and for subscribing if you have subscribed, or for liking the video if you enjoyed it and sharing it with others. And it is my pleasure and my honor to serve in sharing these teachings with you. Until next video, Satam.